Good morning and namaste to all of you. I am Prabhakar Tijare, Executive Member of Vishwa Adhyan Kendra and the coordinator for this VAK the Talk on Refugee a Universal Challenge. As per our tradition, we begin our program with invoking the grace of God. So now may I request Srimati Sonali Pandit ji to recite the Saraswati Vandana to begin with this program. Srimati Sonali ji.
Ji namaste to everybody. Ya kundendu tusharahara dhavala, ya shubhravastramruta, ya veena varadanda manditakara, ya shveta padmasana, ya brahmachuta shankara prabhutivi, devai sada vandita. Samam patu saraswati bhagavati nishesha jadyapaha shuklam brahma vichara sara parama adyam jagadvyapini veena pustaka dharinim abhayadam jadyandhakarapaha Haste sphatikamalikaam vidadatim padmasane samsthitam vande tam parameshwarim bhagavatim buddhi pradam sharadam.
Dhanyavad Sonali ji. As we know, today we are on the last and sixth episode of our online talk, Refugee a Universal Challenge. The topic of today's sixth episode is analysis and solution to this universal challenge of refugee. We have started this talk with the subject of refugee since 27th of October 2021 with a first episode on universality and the causes of refugee. Our second chapter was held on 18th of December on the topic whether the destination chosen by refugees are natural or deliberate. Our third chapter was on psychological journey of refugee, which was held on 26th of February. Our fourth chapter deliberated on how the journey, the refugees who are the victim of conflicts, they themselves become the cause of social conflict in host countries. So in our previous chapter, we discussed on whether the refugees are leading to a terrorism as well as posing a problem to host nation. So on this today's concluding session, we will be finding out the solution to the various various issues we identified with refugees on this today's topic of this solution to the refugee issue. Before I introduce today's guest, may I introduce to you briefly what this VK is there. This Vishwa Adhyan Kendra is a non-profit, non-governmental organization which provides a platform to deliberate on various international issues from the India-centric point of view. VAK, which is popularly understood for Vishwa Adhyan Kendra, is served as a forum for various cultures and traditions around the world to conduct the studies and seminars. The objective of all our activities is to attain the world peace. Hence, our prayer is always Vishwa Dharma Prakashena, Vishwa Shanti Pravartake. VAK is also annually celebrating Universal Brotherhood Day on the occasion of Raksha Bandhan and conducts the Lakshman Rao Bhide Memorial Lecture every year. So, to deliberate on the today's topic, we have two eminent guests today. May I introduce Shri Aabhas Maldahiyar ji, a well-known architect and urban designer, having deep interest in history. He believes architect imagine the story of inhabitants, which became history later. He became during his initial period, he became rebellious to our culture and tradition under the influence of Marxist. But he has transformed totally and written the non-fiction writing on Modi Again, an ex-communist manifest. He is presently engaged on writing the 6-volume book on Timurid Gurkhanian, that is Timurid kings, which are distortedly known as Mughals. Welcome, Shri Aabhas ji. We have with us another speaker today who is well known to many of us through his YouTube channel, Shri Dilip Kumar Dubey ji, who is popularly known as DK Dubey sir. He is a leading Supreme Court lawyer and constitutional expert. He has inspired by the activities of RSS in his early life when he was studying in Farrukhabad and Kanpur. He has been associated with Jammu Kashmir Adhyan Kendra and delivered lectures in many universities on the necessity of abrogating Article 370 and 35A, which later got abrogated, we are aware. He is studying on Indian legal history, history of riyasats, discussion on the Constitutional Committee, etc. He was actively involved in providing the legal support to Ram Janmabhoomi case. Welcome, Shri DK Dubey ji. We have with us our evergreen moderator, Shri Shakti Prasad Srichandan ji, who has moderated this entire series of 6 episodes of Challenge of Refugee Crisis with a great deal. Shri Shakti Prasad ji is the assistant professor in Center of European Studies under the School of International Studies of Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome, Shri Shakti Prasad ji. We welcome all the audience who are attending this talk on Zoom as well as on Facebook Live. Without spending much more time, I hand over today's proceeding to Shri Shakti Prasad ji. Shri Shakti Prasad ji, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaste. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to moderate the panel discussion on VAK the talk, Refugee, a Universal Challenge. If I correctly remember, our first the panel discussion on this series held on 29th October. So we are going to within the last 5 editions held for the last 1 year. This series covered wide range of themes, covering political, psychological, strategic issues related to refugee phenomena. We have also discussed how the refugee phenomena is a challenge to India. In this 6th and final edition, the lecture series will have a frank analysis and solution to this challenge. So the panel members, they have the liberty to discuss, and the audience, the listeners, they have the liberty to ask questions, and our esteemed panelists, they can answer the questions as per their understanding. So by now, the understanding we have developed so far is that the global refugee crisis is one of the world's most pressing and persistent policy problems, which has no easy solution. There are over 80 million forcibly displaced people today. Some 30 million of whom are refugees living outside their home country. There may be different reasons for refugee movements, but conflict-driven displacement is likely to continue to grow as the conflicts remain unresolved, and every year we see new ones develop. Okay. We may also see surge in climate-driven refugees. So refugee returns, on the other hand, have not kept pace with the new displacement. And the status quo is a global population of people living in camp and non-camp settings in poor conditions, limited opportunities, and other hardships. Some of the refugees have become a cause of concern for the host country. They even disturb bilateral relations between sending and host countries. They become competitors to natives in job market, leading to more hatred, racial issues, and consequent disturbance of peace in the host society. We have instances of cases where refugees are also involved in criminal activities, including terrorism, organized crime, and drug trafficking. The need to promote durable solutions for refugees, particularly safe, dignified, and well-coordinated return, has become ever more urgent. So with this brief background, may I now invite our distinguished panelists to address this session. Before you start, I need to inform you that this session is structured in two parts. In the first part, each of our panelists may take up to 20 minutes to share their ideas and views. At the end of 20 minutes, I will give a gentle reminder. In the second part, we'll have a question answer session. So without taking much time, now may I have the honor to invite our first speaker, Mr. Aabhas Maldahiyar, to give his talk. This virtual floor is all yours, Aabhas. Over to you.
Namaskar to everyone. And thanks a lot, Dr. Shakti, for setting the whole premise. And even I got aware that about the other episodes which have been happened in this whole chapters which you have carried for the refugee crisis. And hope I am well audible and the voice is apt enough.
Yes, you're clear right now.
Hindi and English both can be used. Hindi and English as compared.
Sure. So looking back to the whole premise that, of course, my area of interest always lies in connecting the lot of subjects and the fields. And I'm an architect by profession. And somehow, as people would have heard in my introduction, that I always see that architecture is something which is which should become a source of history in the days to come by and vice versa. So both go hand in hand. And architects are called as the people who are jack of all the trades but master of none, because we dabble in everything, because we deal with sociology, we deal with psychology, we deal with aesthetics and a lot of things. So I tend to connect with a lot of aspects. And while I was looking into this whole phenomenon of the refugee crisis and how actually the solutions can be brought in, one thing which really hit my mind too much was that why this refugee crisis are actually arising. I was trying to analyze it from my own perspective. And then the multiple layers which just came up, of which when I further concentrated into the Indian segment in the Indian sector, which should be of utmost interest to me, because my prime focus is to safeguard Bharat and see that if the things are sorted over here, then perhaps the things can be set as a precedent and the ideas can follow through. Now, to go into detail of the solution, what is very important is to understand that how and why the things are happening. Has India been really so much against the refugee coming in, or the foreigners coming into the India and trying to locate themselves over here? History says otherwise. We have always been very welcoming. Like one of the most popular narrative, in fact, it's the history in itself, that when the Persia was completely converted into the Islam, and then the Parsis wanted to come back to the old homeland because they had the memories. And the history goes back to the Battle of 10 Kings, the Srichandan Yudh, and there was a tribe, there was a certain tribe which migrated towards the Parsi land, which later came to be known as Persia. and they were just doing a homecoming. But whatever it may be, it was more like a situation of a refugee crisis, because they were being persecuted and they wanted to be back to their homeland per se, because they had their memories. And when they came in here, the King Jato in the Gujarat was very much welcoming to them, and because there was a lot of correlation between the culture, tradition, and the 2-3 condition which was put, but which was very much acceptable, that they will wear the women will wear the saris, and they will not kill the cows. And but in fact, the Zoroastrians were the people who didn't kill the cows. So they gelled very well, and that's where the whole story of the sugar and the milk comes into the play, that you mix the sugar and the milk, and that what you get as a result is what the relationship will be. So we have been given the refuge to the persecuted Christians. So in fact, the story is, the truth of the story is this, that India has always been the land to the people who have persecuted, and also to the people who have been persecuted, that whoever wanted to take the aid, we were. But with the time, we saw that how the Mongol Turkic invasions came in, and we did understand that yes, there was certainly a difference in the morality and the code of conducts, and the public order was much more different in their perspective than how it is for us. So yes, the realization started growing, and then we see that when there was a period when the Mongol Turkodites, the empires had completely taken over, and they were reigning in all parts, and there were a lot of rebellions and a lot of things was happening. But and yes, there were people who were traveling from a lot of places where the Hindus have been completely wiped away, where the people, as in the Muslims, were traveling in the places. But till the 10th century and till the 11th century, in fact, Afghanistan was not completely Islamized. And people would not be aware about it, but it was not Islamized. It was very much Buddhist in nature. And there's a place called Kafiristan in Afghanistan. I don't know how many people know about it, but there's a land called Kafiristan. So this is actually for the Kafirs, and the tribe called Kalas tribe which lives over there. So yeah, Afghanistan was not very much Islamized, and the travel was happening. We were still very much welcoming to the people, and there are many people who stayed there long, and the process did happen. But when they started putting across their own moral code of conduct, and somehow the ideas was not going so well with how the public order is to be seen by the local indigenous Indians, that is the Indic culture, the Hindu culture, or the Bharatiya culture per se, then the opposition started growing up in a very strong mass. And right from, like, one can see that Vijayanagar Empire was the first Hindu nationalist movement. If one is to see, it was more of the opposition to the Islamic rulers. And then we saw that how the idea of Hindu Swaraj was established by Shivaji Maharaj, and it really happens to be one of the bedrock of whole of a Swaraj and nationalist movement. But what I'm trying to state is that yes, people has realized that these external agents are somehow trying to crush our own public morality, public order, and that's why they need to be thrown away. They need to be, either they have to accept our ideas, because the idea which comes from the West or the Middle Eastern part of the world, it is more about the annihilation of the other culture and tradition. While we had been very welcoming, just seeing that it's just another tradition of worshipping or something, but they were just trying to superimpose their own ideas which exist in eradicating whatever is there on the other end. So, and with the time when we come to the phase of the British, and in the 1920s, when the political Islam had just grown very strong enough. So once the most of the staunchest supporter of the Hindu-Muslim unity in pretext of 1857 battle 1857 freedom movement, first war of independence, Savarkar then goes on to talk about, starts talking about Hindutva, and how when he sees a thing in the Kala Pani, that how the Hindus have been sodomized, and a lot of things was happening. So a lot of awakening was happening. And Rabindranath Tagore goes on to say that about the problems what the two faiths pose upon the Hindus, and it was being acknowledged, it was being seen. And the Khilafat movement, Khilafat or the Khalifa movement had happened, and the whole thing of when the Khilafat movement happens, the whole Muslim world was completely mobilized, and a lot of thinkers were realizing. And later on, Ambedkar goes on to write about that, how it's more of a gangster mentality, and how their brotherhood works, which is more to us, and they perhaps can never see India as their own motherland. Like he writes in his book, the Thoughts on Pakistan, which is also called Pakistan, Partition of Pakistan or Partition of India. So in that book, he talks about that a true Muslim will never be able to see India as his own motherland and consider Hindu as his kith on kin. So this brings up a whole pretext and sets the case very right. And the partition does happen. The idea which was initiated by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in the name of two-nation theory, and his two-nation theory was completely based on the idea of that it's the two distinct religion, and they completely need to be apart, and there can be no intermixing. And he was very clear. And there were a lot of people, during that era, who believed that because the Muslims have ruled for a largest section of the history, so they are the rightful inheritor of the rule even after the British goes. So even when they fought against the British, it was more with this, that we need to get back the lost the Mughal Empire and the things like that. And partition does happen, and then we see a very interesting thing. And yeah, people say that perhaps it was not on the lines of religion, but the truth be told, it was indeed in the name of religion. It was indeed in the name of religion. And in 1947, when for the first time we saw one of the worst of the refugee crisis, where the people flowing in from this side and flowing into that side. And there comes a very interesting precedent, which was set by Pandit Nehru, which was opposed by Sardar Patel, which later on has been followed very actively by Indian state. So that was the case in the November of, November of 1947, when a lot of people of a lot of Muslims from India had flown to Pakistan, and a lot of their houses were empty and vacant. Then the idea was propagated by Pandit Nehru that, this are not to be, Hindus who are coming from the Pakistan are not gonna live over there, right? And he says that, we must ensure that the Muslims are consolidated, and the Muslims Mohalla concept in the block lives in there. So this whole talk about the Muslim Mohalla, which came in recently, right? Yahan se procession ja raha hai, wahan se, it shouldn't pass from Muslim Mohalla. This is coming from there. So it was very much appalled that how Hindus can, the refugee Hindus, right? They can come and live into the places which have been vacated by the Muslims. So Sardar Patel was very much opposed to it. So there also comes a case where that time it was known as East Pakistan. So a lot of Hindus were being killed, and then Sardar Patel came up with the idea that we need to put an end to this menace. So we need to send out a message. So as many Hindus come as a refugee, because also there was an economic flux was there. The economic situation was not very good, because Britishers had just ruined us completely, and we were just trying to remake us. And so even the refugee coming, even if they were Hindus, it was a big thing for us. But Sardar Patel gave a solution that, when the number of the Hindus which are coming, we should send equal number of Muslims. But Nehru was opposed that, it cannot just happen, right? That no Muslims can really go out of India. So now, when we come to the current scenario, that how the things have really grown in, like we recently saw that in 2019, the government of India did come up with the notion that we need to amend the CAA, right? And amend the citizenship law, and it came to be known as CAA. And it was just, it was a very simplistic law. It was not a very long rule of long pages of laws and things, but it was a very simplistic act. It was just that the minorities or the Indic faiths who are being persecuted in the ABP, that is Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, they need to be given the citizenship in India. And it was based on a lot of older reports, and even Congress had spoken about it. But if you just relate it to the precedent set by Pandit Nehru, that he says that, in the house is vacated by this Muslim, so the place is vacated by Muslims. Now the Hindus who are coming in over, they can't stay. So this sets a premise, or it gives you the genesis of the brain of those people who, on whom the whole hell just broke open, right? When a lot of the lies were propagated, a lot of myths were created around CAA, that all the Muslims will just be stripped of their citizenship, and then the comparison were being made with the laws of the Myanmar, citizenship laws of the Myanmar and CAA. And that is how the comparison between the Rohingyas and the Indian Muslims was set across. And using those precedents, a lot of research started being done in a lot of universities too. And we saw that how the left gang or left-leaning gang of the students broke onto the street. And then we saw what happened in West Bengal, right? Because West Bengal happens to be the land which has got the maximum number of Bangladeshi immigrants, and of course the Rohingyas are there en masse. Now the trains, we saw the central government properties were burned down, the railway tracks were just dismantled. A lot happened, and of course the things were happening in our national capital city too. So now you can imagine the strength of the narrative, that the law didn't talk about something, but just based on the narrative, just to taking ahead with the notion set by Pandit Nehru in 1947, that how he was trying to behave with this discrimination against the Hindus, that is reflected over very strongly. So and now when it comes to India really faces a lot of problems of the immigrants. Of course, there are a lot of Bangladeshi immigrants, there are a lot of Rohingyas. As per the statistics, around 40,000 or something, as per the, not a very latest one, but around 40,000 Rohingyas are there, of which hardly, I think, 30 or 40% are registered. And and what is very interesting, that these Rohingyas are passing through the Bangladesh, which should be their heaven, right? It should be heaven to them, because this is a narrative that India is a land which persecutes the Muslims and the minorities, but still you want the minorities, or you want the Muslims to come in over here, but they surpass the state called Bangladesh, and Bangladesh doesn't opens the door very easily and initially to them. And there are many other Muslim states too, but they don't go anywhere else, but they want to come to India most of the time. They surpassed Bangladesh and they came into India. And later on, the reports emerged that whatever the blast which happened in Bodh Gaya, it was a result of the radicalization of the Rohingyas, which was happening at the hand of Lashkar-e-Toiba. There was a link, and there was also a terror outfit. I forgot the name of the terror outfit, which was a Rohingya terror outfit, which was run with the aid from the Lashkar-e-Toiba. Now it's happening in 2013 and something, and from 2013 we have walked around 9 years ahead, and a lot of cases, lot of the incidences have come across where they have been actively involved in riots, and including the Delhi riots. There were a lot of people who were illegal immigrants. And what the irony of the state is that still we couldn't bring in the laws for the CAA. CAA still, we don't know how the things, it's not enforced. And but at the same time, when we see in West Bengal, the identity documents are just being given like anything. And the stories what I hear from the locals of the West Bengal is very horrific. It can just be any Bangladeshi, it can be any Rohingyas just getting the Aadhaar card, and the identity is just established. While the Hindus, Buddhists, and the Jains who are being actually persecuted, and the Sikhs in the land called ABP, so whole country goes on fire just because they just don't want them to come in here, right? So so it's very important for us to really get to the crux of the matter, that somehow the Indian state has been tamed in a way that they will always have certain kind of sympathy for the minorities whom what we see today. And President, of course, being said by Pandit Nehru as a starter, and even we go a bit go a bit in the past that even 295A was the outcome of Mahatma Gandhi's involvement in the Rajpal case. So somehow the state has always been very accommodative to the Muslims, but when it comes to the Hindus, it has always failed to really take up the issue. So the challenge of the refugee crisis lies in the two layers. One is that, yes, we want to take the refugees? Yes, we certainly should be open as much as possible to all the dharmic faiths. My stand is very clear on it, whatsoever it may be, because India happens to be the only natural land for them to go to. They can't go to anywhere else. But we should certainly close the door for any illegal immigrants and then normalizing it, whoever is not coming from the Indic faith, because the precedents just don't go well. It's not from, I'm not talking about what's happening from 1920s, the Khalifa movement or so, but right from beginning, right, the 9th century onwards. I will not go into 7th century, 8th century, because actually his story of Bin Qasim is actually a fabricated one. There is no primary source for it, but many historians, including on the so-called nationalistic side, also vouch for it, but there is no primary source which talks about Bin Qasim. So I will take up the instances from 9th century onwards. They have been the way they are, and going through the time, whether it's Turco-Mongols, then comes the era of the Tipu Sultan, and so henceforth, we have seen that what it means for them. So they try to bring in their own public order, public morality, and we need to subscribe to the public moralities which should come from our dharmic idea, dharmic ethos. And like, for example, if we just take a very naturalistic case which is occurring of very recently, there's a lot of talk about blasphemy, there's a lot of talk about freedom of expression. So we need to understand that in a democracy, demography is certainly your destiny, because demography will set that how the laws will be. Now, just imagine that if you look into the history, that how 295A came into being, it was just nothing but to succumbing to the Muslims who wanted very stricter law, because the Rajpal couldn't be booked under any circumstances at that time, because there was a 153A was not sufficient enough to book this man, and that is when 295A had come in. And but ultimately, even not 295A, he was stabbed by a man called Ilmuddin. So they try to bring in their laws very very strongly, but the past of the Indic tradition, the ethos of the Indic tradition lies in the moral order of us lies in debating and discussing the topics and the subject religions ideas very openly. That was the reason why Astics and Nastic school of thoughts emerged at the same time, like Nalanda, which was ransacked and burned down by Bakhtiyar Khilji. This was a land which was which held the studies of the Astikas and Nastikas at the same time. So, but once the population of the minority community really, if it starts swelling in, they will try to impose their public order and morality. And what this will do is that it will bring more and more 295As, right? You will not be able to discuss, you will not be able to debate. And somehow what India is known for, or somehow why it happened to be the paradise for all the people to get a refuge back then in the time of the Parsis coming in over here. So it will just cease to exist, right? That any country which has just converted into Islamic State, you see that how it transforms to. So we need to be very cautious about it. Yeah.
Sorry for interruption, Aabhasji. You may now conclude.
Yeah, sure.
The rest of the issues we can discuss during questions.
Sure. So the whole case I was just trying to build is that it's very important to keep in stand to saying what is our public morality, and it's more has to be drawn from the Indic idea. Then that would only happen if we really curb this illegal immigration, because though it looked like a political phenomenon on a plain paper or something, this country so us country mein aana, but it has larger civilizational consequences. With this, I'll conclude for now.
Okay, thank you so much. And it was really interesting, and we got to know so many new things. Now moving on to our next speaker, may I now request our next speaker, Mr. D.K. Dubey, to give his talk. This virtual floor is all yours, Mr. Dubey. Over to you.
Thank you. I want to know that everyone is familiar with the Indian languages. If yes, then we'll start in Hindi.
Yes, please go ahead.
Anyone having the problem?
No problem. Please go ahead.
ठीक है, अच्छा ठीक है, मैं इस विषय को आज के संदर्भ में लेना चाहता हूँ, what the history is and what happened with the India। अभी पूरी बात शक्ति जी ने बताई और बहुत सारे उदाहरण भी दिए। मेरा मानना ये है कि आज की तारीख में जो भारत में कानून हैं, और कोई भी देश आज की तारीख में अगर कोई भी देश चलना चाहता है तो वो कानून बनाकर करता है, क्योंकि अब वो कैरेक्टर किसी देश का नहीं रह गया कि भाई भगवान राम थे, उन्होंने कह दिया और फाइनल हो गया। अभी तो हर देश में अपना एक कानून है, अपना एक संविधान है, अपना एक सिस्टम है। ये जो पूरा प्रकरण शुरू होता है ये 1919 के बाद शुरू होता है, जब फर्स्ट वर्ल्ड वॉर हुआ तो ये एक बड़ी प्रॉब्लम हमारे देश में आई। और ये जो बड़ी प्रॉब्लम हमारे देश में आई, उसमें हमारे देश में क्या उस समय अंग्रेजों के सामने आई और उन्होंने ये तय किया, या मैं कहूं कि उस समय लीग ऑफ नेशन ने ये तय किया कि हर एक कंट्री के पास अपना एक पासपोर्ट होगा। तो इंटरनेशनली पासपोर्ट रिकॉग्नाइज किया गया। उस समय हम वीजा शब्द इस्तेमाल नहीं करते थे, उस समय पासपोर्ट टू एंटर एंड पासपोर्ट टू गो आउटसाइड ऑफ द कंट्री। तो उस समय अंग्रेजों का बहुत जगह पर शासन था और उस शासन के अनुसार वो तय करते थे कि भाई हम ब्रिटिशर्स हैं तो हम सभी कंट्रियों में जहां जहां कॉलोनी हमने बना रखी है वहां जाने का अधिकार है, और कंट्री के अंदर जिन कंट्रियों पर उन्होंने कॉलोनी बनाई है उस कॉलोनी के लोगों को आने जाने का अधिकार है, ऐसा उन्होंने तय किया था। हम ये कहते जरूर हैं भारत के संदर्भ में कि भारत जो है वो, हमारे शब्दों में हम कहते हैं कि बहुत सारे राइटर्स ने लिखा है भारत स्वतंत्रता के बाद भी कि भाई हमारी जो प्रिंसली स्टेट थी वो स्वतंत्र होने का अधिकार थे और स्वतंत्र थी। ऐसा देखने में नहीं आया, क्योंकि पासपोर्ट एक्ट जिस समय हम पढ़ते हैं तो भारत के बाहर किसी भी व्यक्ति को जाना होता है, भारत के अंदर किसी भी व्यक्ति को आने को होता है तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया 1935 को अगर हम लेते हैं तो वो ये कहता है, इंडिया की डेफिनेशन, इंडिया दैट इज ब्रिटिश इंडिया इंक्लूडिंग प्रिंसली स्टेट्स। तो भारत की डेफिनेशन जो बताता है वो 311 में, उस डेफिनेशन के अनुसार भारत में जो भी घुसेगा या भारत में जो भी आता है वो व्यक्ति अंग्रेज से पासपोर्ट लेगा, या यहां से जाना है तो अंग्रेज से पासपोर्ट लेगा क्योंकि भारत पर उनका कब्जा है। ऐसी परिस्थिति के बाद जब हम स्वतंत्र होते हैं, स्वतंत्रता के समय यूएनओ बनी गया था 1945 में, तो 1951 में पहला रिफ्यूजी कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई, जिसको हम इंटरनेशनल रिफ्यूजी कॉन्फ्रेंस या कुछ ऐसा शब्द इस्तेमाल कहते हैं। हम उसके पार्ट नहीं बने। कारण मुझे लगता है कि बहुत ज्यादा ये रहा होगा कि हमने जब संविधान बनाया तो संविधान बनाने में आर्टिकल 5 से लेकर आर्टिकल 11 तक हमने ये व्यवस्था की, और आर्टिकल 5 से आर्टिकल 11 तक जो व्यवस्था की उसने सिटीजनशिप डिफाइन कर दी कि भारत का सिटीजन कौन होगा। अब यहां पर हम जब रिफ्यूजी जो इंटरनेशनल रिफ्यूजी वो है उसके हम कन्वेंशन के पार्ट नहीं है, का मतलब हमारा इंटेंशन एकदम क्लियर है, और वो 1951 में हो रहा है। हमारा इंटेंशन बिल्कुल क्लियर है कि भैया भारत में रिफ्यूजीज के लिए कोई स्थान नहीं है और हम रिफ्यूजी नहीं मानते। भारत में जो रिफ्यूजी शब्द इस्तेमाल किया गया वो भी मुझे लगता है गलत इस्तेमाल किया गया, क्योंकि हमने उस समय पार्टीशन के टाइम पर कहा वेस्ट पाक रिफ्यूजीज या ईस्ट पाक रिफ्यूजीज। आज भी जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को वेस्ट पाक रिफ्यूजी जो पाकिस्तान के उस हिस्से से आए तो उनको वेस्ट पाक रिफ्यूजीज कहा गया और आज भी कहा जाता है। और ये कोई संवैधानिक व्यवस्था नहीं है, ये एक लोकल व्यवस्था है जिसमें हम कहते हैं वेस्ट पाक रिफ्यूजीज को अभी भी वहां सुविधाएं नहीं दी गई और आर्टिकल 35 कैपिटल ए बनाकर हमने उनके अधिकारों को रोक भी दिया। जबकि पार्टीशन में तो डेमोग्राफी चेंज हुई, डिस्प्लेस तो उनको उस समय कहा जाना चाहिए कि भाई डिस्प्लेस है, लेकिन कंट्री नया बन गया तो चलो हम ये भी कह लेते हैं कि वो रिफ्यूजीज हैं। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ कोई टर्मिनोलॉजी ऐसी है नहीं जिसको हम रिफ्यूजी कहते हैं। हम ये कहते हैं कि अनडिवाइडेड भारत के जो हिस्से थे, जो लोग सदस्य थे, यानी कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया 1935 के जो लोग थे वो भारत के सिटीजन हैं। भारत में जिसने जन्म लिया है उसके पेरेंट्स भारतीय हैं, देश संसार के किसी कोने में रहता है लेकिन गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया 1935 का सदस्य है तो वो इंडियन सिटीजन है। और हमने फिर पाकिस्तान को लेकर आर्टिकल 7, 8, 9 में कुछ ऐसी व्यवस्था भी की कि पार्टिकुलर तारीख से पहले जो आ गया होगा वो भारत का सिटीजन है, पार्टिकुलर तारीख के बाद जो आया होगा उसको भारत की सिटीजनशिप लेने के लिए एक अथॉरिटी के सामने प्रेजेंट होना पड़ेगा और उसको बताना पड़ेगा कि वो इतना लेट क्यों आया, उसके जेन्युइन कॉज हैं, तो वो अथॉरिटी अप्रूव करके उसको भारत की सिटीजनशिप दे सकती है। ऐसी व्यवस्था हमने करके रखी। अब यहां से ही जो हमारे यहाँ की सिस्टम है उसको समझने का प्रयास करना चाहिए, क्योंकि हमारे पास 19 1946 में एक फॉरेनर्स एक्ट है। इन कानूनों के अंदर ही सोल्यूशन भी है। ऐसा नहीं है जो लोग ये कहते हैं कि रिफ्यूजीज का भारत में सोल्यूशन क्या है, हमने सोल्यूशन निकाल के रखा है और उस पर हमारे कोर्ट्स भी संज्ञान लेते हैं और हम उस पर काम कर रहे हैं। तमाम तरह की कोर्ट में पिटीशनें गई हैं जिसमें ये कहा गया कि आप रिफ्यूजी यहाँ पर मेंटेन करिए, रिफ्यूजी लॉज को अप्लाई करिए और तमाम तरह का। भारत सरकार लगातार कहती रही है कि हम ना कन्वेंशन के पार्ट हैं 1967 के, ना ही प्रोटोकॉल के पार्ट हैं। हम रिफ्यूजीज अपने हिसाब से देते हैं, अपने कानूनों के अनुसार जब हमें लगता है। तो हमारे पास 1946 का फॉरेनर्स एक्ट है, फिर पासपोर्ट एक्ट हमने 1967 में जो रिवाइज करके बनाया, वैसे तो ओरिजिनल 1920 वाला है। तीसरा कानून एक्स्ट्राडिशन एक्ट है हमारे पास 1962 का, और जो चौथा बहुत महत्वपूर्ण कानून है वो है इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स डिटर्मिनेशन बाय ट्रिब्यूनल एक्ट 1983। फिर से मैं इसको कहता हूं, जो सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है वो है इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स डिटर्मिनेशन बाय ट्रिब्यूनल्स एक्ट 1983। तो हमारे पास एक बाकायदा ट्रिब्यूनल्स हैं। हमने वो ट्रिब्यूनल्स अभी आपने 4-5 दिन पहले सुना होगा कि केरला हाई कोर्ट ने कहा केरला सरकार से कि भाई आप ट्रिब्यूनल क्यों नहीं बनाते, डिपोर्टेशन सेंटर क्यों नहीं बनाते, लोगों को डिपोर्ट यहां से करना है तो कैसे किया जाएगा, उनकी चिन्ह कैसे हो, वो चिन्हित कैसे होंगे, उनको यहाँ के निवासी हैं कि नहीं हैं या बाहर से आए हुए हैं, वो इलीगल इमिग्रेंट्स हैं, वो कैसे डिसाइड होगा। तो हमने बाकायदा ट्रिब्यूनल्स 1983 में बनाए थे और वो देश भर में जहां जहां ये समस्या है वहां पर हमने बनाकर रखे हैं। अब सवाल ये पैदा होता है कि जब हम ये कहते हैं कि जो परसिक्यूटेड है, पाकिस्तान से आया, बांग्लादेश से आया या फिर अफगानिस्तान से आया या उससे पहले तमिल श्रीलंका से आए थे, उससे पहले तिब्बतन रिफ्यूजीज भारत में आए थे, तो हम कैसे देते हैं इनको। हमने दो ही अभी तक लीगली रिफ्यूजी माने हैं, वो तो एक हमने श्रीलंका वालों को माना है और दूसरा हमने फॉरेनर्स एक्ट में ही तिब्बतन को माना है। तो फिर सवाल यहां पर पैदा होगा कि तिब्बत और उनको ही क्यों माना, आपने बाकी लोगों को क्यों नहीं माना, या कभी हमने अफ्रीकन कंट्रियों के कुछ लोगों को भी माना था और उस समय बाकायदा कानून बनाकर उनको वापस लिया था, हिंदुओं को जो 1935 के पार्ट थे। ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात है कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया 1935 के पार्ट थे और वो वहां रह गए थे, उनको वापस लेना था। तो हमने पासपोर्ट एक्ट, फॉरेनर्स एक्ट, इन दोनों में व्यवस्था करके रखी थी सिटीजनशिप को देखते हुए, और इनमें व्यवस्था ये करके रखी थी कि जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया 1935 के पार्ट हैं, यानी कि भारत के सिटीजन हैं और किसी कारणवश संसार के किसी कोने में रह गए हैं, चाहे वो पाकिस्तान में रह गए हों या फिर और किसी कोने में रह गए हों, वो भारत में जिस समय प्रवेश करेंगे उस समय उनके ऊपर फॉरेनर्स एक्ट नहीं लगेगा। यानी कि हम उनको फॉरेनर्स एक्ट की जो दायरा है, जो कोर्सिव एक्शन है सरकार को लेना चाहिए एग्जीक्यूटिव को, उस एक्शन में हम फॉरेनर्स उसमें इन लोगों को नहीं लाएंगे। दूसरी बात कि हमने तिब्बतन को लिया है, तो तिब्बत, श्रीलंका और नेपाल, इनके विषय में हमको पता होना चाहिए। ये प्रोटेक्टोरेट स्टेट हैं हमारे। प्रोटेक्टोरेट स्टेट हम उनको कहते हैं जिसके संरक्षण की जिम्मेदारी भारत सरकार लेती है। अभी भी आपने देखा होगा नेपाल का जो सेनाध्यक्ष होता है और भारत का सेनाध्यक्ष होता है, वो एक दूसरे के साथ कन्वर्सेशन करते हैं। हमारा सेनाध्यक्ष वहां जाता है तो उसको चीफ पोस्ट पर बिठाया जाता है और उनका सेनाध्यक्ष यहाँ पर आता है तो भी हम उनको ऑनरेरी प्लेस देते हैं। अभी भी हम प्रोटेक्टोरेट स्टेट जिसको कहें तो हम ये जो ऊपर क्या बोलते हैं, बांग्लादेश के ऊपर जो कंट्री, उसको हमने बनाकर रखा है और आने जाने की कोई वहां मनाही ही नहीं है, हम देते हैं और हम उसको किसी न किसी से परमिट देते हैं। तो सवाल ये पैदा होता है कि जब तिब्बतन भारत में आए, जब कम्युनिस्टों ने कब्जा किया, तो चूंकि तिब्बत का प्रोटेक्शन भारत सरकार के पास था, उस समय भारत सरकार अगर चाहती तो वो डोकलाम की तरह उनको रोकती, यानी कि उनको रोक सकती थी और हम तिब्बत के बिहाफ पर युद्ध लड़ सकते थे। भारत सरकार ने वो नहीं किया। तो चूंकि हम वो प्रोटेक्टेड स्टेट की कैटेगरी में आता है, इसलिए उन लोगों को जब भारत में प्रवेश किया उन्होंने, तो उनको हमने फिर रिफ्यूजी का स्टेटस दिया, यानी कि फॉरेनर्स एक्ट में हमने उनको सुविधा दी। और ऐसे ही जो तमिल्स, श्रीलंका भी हमारा प्रोटेक्टोरेट स्टेट हुआ करता था, तो श्रीलंका के लोग भी जब भारत में आए, तमिलियंस या जो भी वहां प्रोसिक्यूट हुए, तो उनको हमने सुविधा इसलिए दी कि फॉरेनर्स एक्ट में ऑलरेडी हमने उनको सुविधा दे रखी। अब ये तो नए पार्टीशन थे। अफगानिस्तान की बात अगर हम कर लें तो वो भी हमारे यहाँ से गया, और इनकी बात कर लें बांग्लादेश और पाकिस्तान की, तो उनको भी हमने फॉरेनर्स एक्ट और पासपोर्ट एक्ट में पहले से एग्जेम्पशन देकर रखा था। यानी कि वो भारत का वीजा लेकर भारत में अगर प्रवेश कर जाते हैं तो फिर उनका वीजा खत्म होने के बाद भी हम उनको फॉरेनर्स एक्ट के तहत दोषी नहीं मानते। अब वो अलग बात है कि उनको हम डिस्प्लेस पर्सन मानकर रखते हैं, क्योंकि हमने शुरू से उनको वो सुविधा दे रखी है 1947 से ही। इसलिए वो जब भारत में आते हैं तो भारत में आते समय हम मतलब वीजा तो देते ही हैं, लेकिन हम उनको फॉरेनर्स एक्ट में उनके खिलाफ कोर्सिव एक्शन नहीं लेते। अब डिपोर्ट करने की बात जहां तक आती है तो डिपोर्ट करने के हमारे कानून है, वो इलीगल इमिग्रेंट्स, इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स को हम डिपोर्ट करते हैं। जो पासपोर्ट लेकर आया था या जो वीजा लेकर भारत का आया था उसको हम इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स कहते नहीं हैं, और इन कंट्रियों के तो इनको तो बिल्कुल नहीं कहते, क्योंकि इलीगल माइग्रेंट्स दिन आपको फॉरेनर्स एक्ट के तहत भाई आपको करनी पड़ेगी, पासपोर्ट एक्ट का दोषी हो जाएगा वो। तो इन लोगों को पासपोर्ट एक्ट और फॉरेनर एक्ट का हमने दोषी माना ही नहीं कभी, ये शुरू से नहीं माना, एग्जेम्पशन करके रखा था। और ये बात पॉलिटिकली भी लगातार हमारी लीडरशिप ने कहा कि भाई आप पाकिस्तान में रहते हैं, आपको अगर भारत में आना है कभी तो आप आ सकते हैं, आपके लिए दरवाजे सदैव खुले हुए हैं, आपको आ जाना चाहिए। 1947 में नहीं आ पा रहे या नहीं आपकी इच्छा हुई, आप नहीं आना चाहते, तो भी हमें मालूम है, ये हमारे यहाँ लीडरशिप को पता रहा होगा कि हमें मालूम है कि समस्याएं खड़ी होंगी भविष्य में, इसलिए आप अगर आएंगे तो हम फॉरेनर्स एक्ट का और पासपोर्ट एक्ट का दोषी नहीं मानेंगे। अब बात यहां पर आती है कि ये जो रोहिंग्यास भारत में आए या जो आज की तारीख में बांग्लादेशी मुस्लिम्स भारत में आ जाते हैं, या ये जो और मुस्लिम कैटेगरी या जो हम कहते हैं कि नॉन हिंदूज आ जाते हैं, इनके लिए एग्जेम्पशन की कोई व्यवस्था नहीं, क्योंकि लीगली इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ इंडिया एक्ट 1947 में इनको आने का अधिकार नहीं है। चूंकि रिलीजन के बेस पर हमने ये कंट्री बनाए हैं, इसलिए इनको वहां पर जाने का तो है, लेकिन उनको वहां से आने का अधिकार नहीं, इसलिए ये एग्जेम्प्टेड भी नहीं है, ना पासपोर्ट एक्ट से ना फॉरेनर्स एक्ट से। अब ये अगर भारत में आते हैं, वीजा लेकर भी भारत में आते हैं, तो भी इनको चूंकि एग्जेम्पशन नहीं है इसलिए इनको डिपोर्ट करेंगे। और बाकी के बच्चे, जब आप ये कहते हैं रिफ्यूजी, द पर्सन हु आर द रिफ्यूजीज, तो रिफ्यूजीज की डेफिनेशन लोगों ने लगाई है द पर्सन टू whomever forced to immigrate in another country, यानी कि इतना प्रोसिक्यूशन हुआ कि वो दूसरे देशों में घुस जाएं, मजबूरी में घुसे, उनके पास कोई और साधन नहीं था, इसलिए वो वहां पर घुसने के लिए मजबूर हो गए और तब वो वहां पर गए। हमारे यहां भारत में ऐसी कैटेगरी को इलीगल इमिग्रेंट कहते हैं, और मजे की बात यह है कि भारत की फोर्सेस वहां पर लगी हुई हैं। अच्छा, आप मुझे बताइए, उस समय ये लोग घुस रहे थे और भारत सरकार अगर उनको भारत में एंट्री देने की अनुमति नहीं देती लीगली, तो फिर बॉर्डर पर क्या हो सकता था? बॉर्डर पर तो फोर्स लगी हुई है, बॉर्डर पर फोर्स को बॉर्डर क्रॉस करते समय किसी भी व्यक्ति को तुरंत सीधे वहां एक्शन लेने का राइट है, तो ये तो एक्शन उन पर हो जाना चाहिए था, नहीं हो पाया, किसी तरह से चोरी छुपे सुरंग बनाकर ये करके वो करके, और भारत सरकार उतनी सुदृढ़ नहीं थी स्वतंत्रता के बाद, तो ये घुस गए। अब ये घुस गए, देखिए वहां पर बॉर्डर पर अगर खड़े होते, बॉर्डर पर घुस रहे होते और वहां पर फोर्सेस, सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस देख लेती और ये उनकी बात नहीं मानते तो हम गोली चला देते, और अगर घुस गए हैं तो हम ये क्यों कहें कि हम इनको अधिकार देंगे। अब इनके खिलाफ सीधा एक्शन भारत नहीं ले सकता, और समस्या भारत की यही है, जो बहुत सारे प्रश्न लोग भारत के लोग कर रहे हैं, खास तौर से जिनको हम अर्बन नक्सल्स कहते हैं, खास तौर से हम जिनको ये कहते हैं वो वर्ल्ड व्यू रखते हैं, उनको बाउंड्रीज से मतलब नहीं है, वो संसार में कम्युनिज्म एक तरफ से दूसरी तरफ रहता है, या इस्लाम एक जगह से दूसरे स्थान पर पूरे विश्व में एक सा है, बाउंड्रीज को मानते नहीं। ये लोग इस तरह के सेमिनार्स बड़ी बड़ी अच्छी यूनिवर्सिटीज में करके और फिर उनके डॉक्यूमेंट तैयार करते हैं, दुनिया भर के कानून लगाते हैं और ये यूरोपियन लॉ से कंपेयर करते हैं। यूरोपियंस की सिचुएशन दूसरी थी और हमारी सिचुएशन दूसरी है। हमने अपने यहाँ बाकायदा ट्रिब्यूनल्स बना रखे हैं, तो ये जो व्यवस्था है इसमें आज की तारीख में सोल्यूशन क्या है ऐसा लोग कहते हैं कि इसका कोई सोल्यूशन भारत ने नहीं निकाला, क्योंकि भारत में कोई रिफ्यूजी लॉ नहीं है और भारत ये कहता है कि हम रिफ्यूजी कन्वेंशन के हिस्से नहीं हैं, हम रिफ्यूजी प्रोटोकॉल 1967 के हिस्से नहीं हैं, इसलिए साहब रिफ्यूजीज का कुछ होगा ही नहीं। क्या जो 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 जबरदस्ती भारत में घुसाया उसका क्या करेंगे? हमारे यहाँ के तमाम तरह के कोर्टों ने ये कहा कि हम उनको सिटीजन तो नहीं मानते, इसलिए सिटीजन के जो राइट्स हैं वो तो उनको नहीं दे सकते, लेकिन उनको इक्वेलिटी है तब तक जब तक वो भारत में हैं। इक्वेलिटी से मतलब है कि उनको जीने का अधिकार है, हम उनको गोली नहीं चलाएंगे, हम उनके खिलाफ कोई कोर्सिव विशेष एक्शन नहीं लेंगे, लेकिन इलीगल इमिग्रेंट्स का डिटर्मिनेशन का जो ट्रिब्यूनल हमने बनाकर रखा, जैसे ऐसे किसी व्यक्ति को हम पकड़ते हैं तो पकड़ने के बाद उसको उस ट्रिब्यूनल में प्रेजेंट करवाते हैं, बाकायदा उसका इन्वेस्टिगेशन होता है, बाकायदा वहां मुकदमा होता है। मुकदमे के बाद जिस समय ट्रिब्यूनल के सामने ये सिद्ध हो जाता है कि ये वाकई में इलीगल इमिग्रेंट है, ये भारत का निवासी नहीं है, और हमने उसको फॉरेनर्स एक्ट 1946 के तहत तिब्बतन या श्रीलंका की तरफ से रिफ्यूजी नहीं माना, वहां से जो लोग आए उनको रिफ्यूजी का स्टेटस नहीं दिया है, तो फिर ये इलीगल इमिग्रेंट है। इसको यहां पर केस डिसाइड होने के बाद जिस कंट्री का ये निवासी है उस कंट्री की सरकार से बात करके डिपोर्ट करना। तो हम, आपको याद होगा कि अभी आंग सान सू की जब भारत आई थी और भारत के प्राइम मिनिस्टर भी लगातार किसी फोरम पर इन लोगों से मिलते हैं जहां के निवासी भारत में हैं, तो उनसे बात करते हैं और उनसे कहते हैं कि भाई आपके यहाँ के लोग हमारे यहाँ हैं, आप उनको लीजिए और उनकी सुविधाओं की व्यवस्था करिए, या आपके देश में कानून की जैसी व्यवस्था है उस व्यवस्था के अनुसार उनको एडजस्ट करिए। वो लोग भी तैयार हैं, बांग्लादेश भी इस बात को मान चुका है हमारे प्रधानमंत्री के सामने कि हाँ, आप अगर ऐसे लोगों को चिन्हित करते हैं तो हम वापस लेने को तैयार हैं, लेकिन हमारे यहाँ भी उनकी निवासिता सिद्ध होनी चाहिए। और ऐसा म्यांमार भी कह चुका है कि जो लोग ऐसे हैं उनको हम वापस लेने को तैयार हैं। केवल पाकिस्तान ऐसा कोई स्टेटमेंट नहीं देता, लेकिन बाकी कंट्रियों के साथ हमारे डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशन के साथ हम उनको एग्री कर चुके हैं, और अभी भी जो लोग तैयार हो जाते हैं, जिन लोगों को पकड़ लिया जाता है, उनको हम बाकायदा एक सेंटर पर रखते हैं। सेंटर पर रखने के बाद उन सरकारों से बात करते हैं और उन सरकारों से बात करने के बाद उनको वहां पर उनके जाने की व्यवस्था भी करते हैं। और हम तो, हमारे ऊपर तो इल्जाम ये लगा दिया जाता है कि हिंदू बाहुल्य है, इसलिए ये लोग जो वहां से परसिक्यूटेड हैं, जो 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 शिया परसिक्यूटेड हैं, जो रोहिंग्या परसिक्यूटेड हैं, इनको भारत इसलिए नहीं दे रहा है, बाकी हिंदुओं को दे रहा है और ये कर रहा वो कर रहा। बांग्लादेश में जो रोहिंग्याज आए, उन रोहिंग्याज को लेकर बांग्लादेश ने अपने यहाँ एक टापू तय किया, बाकायदा उन्होंने अपने यहाँ से उठाकर उस एक निर्जीव टापू पर जाकर कॉलोनी बनाई और वहां उनको रखा, और रखने के बाद वो म्यांमार सरकार से बात कर रहे हैं कि इन लोगों को हमने एक जगह इकट्ठा कर दिया, यहां से आप लेकर जाइए। अब वो टापू पर जहां पर रखा गया है आइलैंड पे, वहां पर भी ऊधम मच रहा है और वो फिर तैर तैर कर इलीगल नावों से इधर से उधर होकर बांग्लादेश में घुसते जा रहे हैं। बांग्लादेश सरकार लगातार उनको डिपोर्ट करने की व्यवस्था कर रही है, और मुझे नहीं लगता कि संसार का कोई भी कंट्री, खासतौर से जो लोग इस्लामिक माइनॉरिटीज का प्रश्न भारत में उठाते हैं, संसार का कोई भी इस्लामिक कंट्री किसी भी प्रकार के असाइलम की बात करता है, केवल वो पॉलिटिकल असाइलम की तो बात करते हैं, और कहीं ना कहीं वो रिफ्यूजी को कोई स्टेटस वो नहीं देते, वो रिफ्यूजीज को अपने यहाँ नहीं लेते, जहां तक मेरी जानकारी है। पाकिस्तान का इलस्ट्रेशन सामने है, आसानी से हम उनको यहाँ चिन्हित कर लेते हैं। जम्मू कश्मीर में एक बड़ी तादाद में पकड़े गए और उन लोगों को चिन्हित हमने कर लिया। पाकिस्तान आज भी लेने को उनको वापस तैयार नहीं है, वो हमारी जेलों में सड़ रहे हैं, जेलों में पड़े हुए हैं। इसलिए भारत की जो सिचुएशन है उसमें हमको देखना चाहिए कि जो भारत में आया, परमिशन लेकर आया, हमने उनको असाइलम दिया हुआ है, जिनको असाइलम दिया हुआ है उनको भी हमने फॉरेनर्स एक्ट में व्यवस्था है, सरकार उस पर बाकायदा कैबिनेट बैठती है, कैबिनेट उस पर डिसीजन लेती है, डिसीजन लेने के बाद हम उनको यहां पर स्थान देते हैं। लेकिन जो लोग इलीगल इमिग्रेट होते हैं, यानी कि भारत की बाउंड्रीज, भारत की सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस को धता बताकर जो लोग घुसे, जो भारत की सॉवरेंटी को चैलेंज करते हुए घुसे, मैं मानकर चलता हूं अगर भारत सरकार ने तिब्बतन को यहां पर स्थान दिया या श्रीलंका वालों को यहां पर स्थान दिया और हमने बाकायदा उनको सुविधाएं दी, उनकी कॉलोनियां बसाई, उनको स्थान दिया, उनके लिए व्यवस्था भी है। आप बहुत सारे राज्यों में आप चले जाइए तो राज्य सरकारों का जो नोटिफिकेशन निकलता है मैं यहां तक कहता हूं उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर जो सिविल जज का नोटिफिकेशन निकलता है या एचजीएस का नोटिफिकेशन निकलता है, आप समझते हैं कि सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट पोस्ट होती है डिस्ट्रिक्ट मैजिस्ट्रेट के ऊपर भी एक आईएएस अधिकारी के ऊपर हमारा हायर जुडिशियल सर्विसेज का अधिकारी बैठता है, उसमें भी ये व्यवस्था दे रखी है कि जो लोग रिफ्यूजीज श्रीलंका के हैं या जो लोग रिफ्यूजीज तिब्बत के हैं और जो नेपाल से आए हुए हैं और भारत में उन्होंने अनुमति के साथ रह रहे हैं, उनको मैजिस्ट्रेट बनने का अधिकार भारत ने दे रखा है। तो जिन लोगों को हमने दिया है बाकायदा कानूनन दिया है, लेकिन जो लोग भारत की सॉवरेंटी को चैलेंज करके आए हैं, जो भारत की संप्रभुता को मानते नहीं है, भारत को सीधा आज की तारीख में चैलेंज कर रहे हैं, उनकी सिक्योरिटी फोर्सेस को नहीं माना, बॉर्डर सीधा क्रॉस किया है, उन लोगों के लिए भारत का सीधा नियम है हमारे पास कोई स्थान नहीं है। हाँ, हम आपको यहां गोली से नहीं मार रहे, अंदर आने के बाद हम आपको कहीं फेंक नहीं रहे, हम आपके ऊपर बाकायदा एक मुकदमा चला रहे हैं, डिटर्मिनेशन ट्रिब्यूनल हमने बनाकर रखा है। मुकदमा चलाने के बाद यहां तक कि उस ट्रिब्यूनल का जजमेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट तक चैलेंज होता है और उसके बाद हम उस कंट्री में बात करके आपको वहां डिपोर्ट करते हैं। लेकिन अब आप ये कहें कि हम जबरदस्ती भारत में रहेंगे क्योंकि हम ब्ला 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 हैं, क्योंकि हमारे दोस्त भारत में रहते हैं, क्योंकि भारत में बहुत सारी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी हमारी दोस्त हैं, भारत में बहुत सारे लोग हमको यहाँ कुछ स्थान देना चाहते हैं या हमारे रिश्तेदार नातेदार रहते हैं, तो भारत सरकार का सीधा सिंपल नियम अभी सुप्रीम कोर्ट में लगाया और यहां तक कि मिजोरम का बॉर्डर अभी मिजोरम सरकार ने खोल दिया था, तो होम मिनिस्ट्री ने वो तुरंत उसको बंद करवाते हुए मिजोरम के चीफ मिनिस्टर को कहा कि हम किसी भी रिफ्यूजी कन्वेंशन के पार्ट नहीं है, इसलिए हमारा दरवाजा किसी के लिए खोला नहीं जा सकता। जिसको जाना है यूएनओ जाए, जिसको जाना है उसके कंट्री में अगर सिचुएशन खराब है तो हम उसके कंट्री में वहां बात करेंगे और उनके लिए अच्छी वहां फैसिलिटी दी जाए, इसकी हम वहां कोशिश करेंगे कि हम डिप्लोमेटिक तरीके से उनको वहां सेटल करवा सकें। लेकिन हमारे यहाँ अपने
sorry for interruption, you may now conclude, we can discuss the rest of these questions now.
नहीं सर, फिर यहीं खत्म करते हैं। मैं तो आप मुझे मुख्य स्पीकर बनाकर रखा तो पूरी बात सुनिए, अदरवाइज नमस्ते।
So actually we have a is it there? Hello?
Hello.
Is he there? We have a timeline to respect, so it's not you know, good to just go away from the meeting. I don't know. He's still there. From the beginning, I said that we have a 20 minutes time limit.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Many Islamic scholars tend to not accept. They say that this is not something there or something. But the truth is that if you talk to any radicalized extremist Maulana who is heading any terrorist organization or something, or is a part of it, he will just give a reference to it. Now, the whole process has always been there. That's why you have got a place called Kafiristan. I spoke about it. So when I use the term Kafiristan, I had a very pointed connotation that I leave a lot of clues for people to understand about it. So it was for a certain reason. So the idea of Islam really relies upon the fact that the whole world needs to be Islamized. Otherwise, the purpose would not be solved, because it comes from the theology itself. Now, why the migrants are targeting? Migrants are indeed targeting, like the Rohingya surpassing Bangladesh and coming in here. Why, despite there's so many Islamic countries, but if something like CAA happens, they will just jump onto India. That why you are doing that? It is because it takes away the license to persecute the minorities in those lands like ABP. If really it comes out as a law, then they will not be persecuted. Right, they can be saved from certain amount of persecution, though they want them to be persecuted, because if they won't be persecuted, somehow the whole doctrine that how you really go on and above the kafirs, and it doesn't work. It's there in the book, it comes from there. So then when we further look into how the Islamic crowd was mobilized in the 1920s, like the 1920s, that the Turkey didn't, the Turkish Muslims didn't wanted the caliphate, right? They were against it. But the Mahatma Gandhi mobilized all the Muslims over here, and there was a lot of travel which was happening from Middle East back then. The people used to come here, and they were radically working to mobilize the people. And Mahatma Gandhi saw it as something. He cracked a deal that, you know, if you will support this, and this will happen. And then the psychosis was very well analyzed with a lot of people like Shri Aurobindo, B.R. Ambedkar, Rabindranath Tagore. Even they were really getting into this psychosis. So how it works now, the migrants will certainly, when the theology itself is working with the idea that if you just don't Islamize whole of a world, then your purpose doesn't fulfill. Because if a suicide bomber is walking in with a suicide bombs with there, so he's not worried about it, what will happen this life, but is more worried about it, what happens beyond that. So whatever the hardship they will pass through, being a refugee or whatsoever it may be, that's so immaterial. But the main target is that what we see in Bodh Gaya, that the Rohingyas will happen with the part of were behind the Bodh Gaya bomb blast. We saw what happened in the Azad Maidan in Mumbai, where Amar Jyoti thing was dishonored, and a lot of things happened, right? So the whole intent lies somewhere else. It comes in the theology. So it can, so even when the points are said that there are laws, there are things which can really sort it out, but unless we don't hit the fundamentals, the things cannot be fixed. The root lies there. Though we may try every day that we have tribunals, we have so many, but these things cannot solve it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Actually, one more thing I just wanted to ask Dubey, but he unceremoniously left the meeting. But the thing is that he, being a student and now a faculty and a researcher of international relations, he mentioned about some countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal, and one country above the Bangladesh. That one country is Bhutan. Actually, these countries are not protectorates, first of all. Even from legal point of view, even from all the point of view, they are not protectorates from the beginning itself. They are sovereign countries, they are independent countries, and they have full integrity. And one more thing, the issue which we need to deal with is the issue we have in our side is that whether we have certain special relationship with these countries, under which, for example, Nepalese people, they can come here, they can work here, and we train their police, we train their administrators. Even in the case of Bhutan, also we train we have special relations. Even with all neighbors, we have certain kind of special relations, that is under which we provide them different kind of help and assistance. Now, talking about this, the idea behind having a conference or seminar or a workshop on refugees is that we don't have many research teams, many research work on refugees, especially refugees in India. Okay, this is still a very virgin topic. We need to debate and we need to see. And I'm very glad that Aabhas ji, you just pointed out some new things, whether that is Kafiristan or all other issues. They're very interesting. And we need to see the things in the present context as well, because as Dubey ji rightly pointed out from the beginning, he said that India is not a party to the convention, refugee convention. Once you are not a party to the refugee convention, then you don't have you are not under any obligation to protect the refugees. But the problem is that we have our Constitution of India. The Constitution of India do protect the refugees in some way or the other. And not only Constitution, from the tradition of Indian culture has been Atithi Devo Bhava. So we treat Atithi, but the problem is that some Atithis, some guests, they take this invitation in a very different way, and they assert their authority here. They involve themselves in so many issues. Okay, that's the problem. And talking about the laws and tribunals, more you have laws, more you have tribunals, that will give you sanctuary, in fact, because under the laws, under the guise of laws, under the under the protection of laws, you can stay your whole life. Even after that, decision will not be taken, and nothing will be decided whether you can stay in the country or not. So the problem is that we need some security and political policies at the center and state levels. We have to take the states into the loop, because many of our states, they are border states, and it depends on them. The first point of entry at the border, first point of entry are the states. So without taking them into confidence, we cannot really enforce the refugee law or something to stop the illegal migrants and refugees. I do agree that we have illegal migrants. We don't use the term refugees, but the situation has made the situation has taken such a level that we now need a refugee law. For example, today we can see in the paper that the Minister of Home Affairs has invited applications from non-Muslim refugees who want to be citizen of India. So now we are using the term refugee. It's not we are not limiting ourselves for the illegal migrants as such. So the thing is that the law is okay, but how to enforce and where to enforce, in which way enforce, we need to take into account. So carrying this debate forward, Aabhas, we need to discuss also one more thing, whether is CAA, NRC indeed a solution to this menace?
Yeah, it certainly looks like one of the solutions, certainly not complete, because see, as per the statistics, the number which I come across, there are 40,000 Rohingyas, okay? But the population of India is so vast, so ginormous, right? And the democracy is for the people, by the people, right? And I'm sure that say that people, let's take the narrative of the left side, that Hindus are the bigots. Let's pick that. Okay. So if say the 75% of the Hindus, or even that they say that, not all the Hindus are bigots, but 50% are bigots. So you know, vote diya BJP ko. So now let's pick those around 50% of them. So you 50% force, and with the, can't they throw out the 40,000 odd from India? So now what I'm trying to implicate is this, that let me take you back to what OAC brothers said, right? That and then Waris Pathan replicated those things in the news somewhere. So and then what is the thing? So Himanta Biswas took a very strong step, which is very important in my eyes, to bring a blanket ban on the madrasas. So you need to see first chop off all the support system which goes to these immigrants who can, say for example, if someone has just got legalized somewhere or other, like West Bengal has just become a boon to these people, the way the things are happening. So I'm not saying that we will have multiple West Bengals, but say that even if there's a West Bengal, there's a state of Kerala, and there may be, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but unless these fundamentals of are really like madrasa, which really bruise the Indian Muslims who are going to stand in support of these guys, and all this congregation and the whole concept of ummah becomes prioritized, which Ambedkar also pointed, over anything of a nationhood or something. That's where we really need to hit at, because it's not about giving refuge to the people who are just stuck in over there because of the persecution. Like it's almost zero Hindus in Afghanistan with the new regime of Taliban. But how do we take care of those people who have overstayed here, जो जबरदस्ती के अतिथि बन के आते हैं और ओवरस्टे कर जाते हैं, और and they do the acts like Bodh Gaya blast and whatnot, right? And the statistics say that there's so many Rohingyas in the jail for so much of crimes, and they commit a lot of crimes. Yeah. So how do we really take care of it, and how they don't get any support or the sentimental or emotional write-up with by some Indian Muslims, which goes into Washington Post and a narrative is created? We need to break down that very strongly.
Yes. And one more thing, as you cited the leadership of Himanta Biswas. I think in the overall context also, leadership at the central level and at the state level required to enforce any law. Okay, so the kind of political will Himanta Biswas government is showing, it's lacking somewhere else. That's why we are not able to control this phenomena. One more thing I just need to discuss. When in 2015, the real refugee crisis, which that came to limelight, and it struck European continent when lakhs, thousands of hundreds of thousands of refugees, they just crossed over the Mediterranean Sea and entered European continent, and it became a crisis, and the whole world took note of it and requested European governments to take care of it. The problem is that just like us, the European Union, which is a political entity and legal entity at the supranational entity, it didn't have a refugee law at that moment. It has many laws, just like we have repatriation law, we have deportation law, everything. Foreign Act, Foreigners Act, all these acts, we have different, small bits, we have different laws. In the same way, they also had the same thing. But how they controlled it, even if you compare India, it's a country with so many states. Even European Union, it's a supranational body having different countries as its member states. The problem, just like India didn't have a refugee law, European Union at that time also did not have any law. They have small laws to deal small issues. But how they controlled it? They controlled it through strong willpower, and they controlled it through enforcing some laws. Even some of the states, they were very aggressive in enforcing. Even at the moment, when you have different countries backed by different political parties, they will see the things in a different way. Just like Himanta Biswas is a nationalist party, he belongs to a nationalist party, so you will see the things in a different way in comparison to other parties. I don't want to mention. But the thing is that they enforced a law, and one more thing they did is they just strengthened Frontex. Frontex is the most powerful mechanism with which European Union enforced to stop refugee movements. Okay. In the same way, what I expect from Indian government to have a separate, law enforcement agency which will take care of this illegal refugees and illegal migrants, which we don't have, because we are still relying on the police force, which are under different states. We have certain paramilitary forces at the central level, but the thing is that the coordination we need, we are not having it. There are different layers and different players, so we need to coordinate at the moment. So your take, Aabhas. What's your take about it?
Yeah, I certainly believe that, as I was saying, that we spoke about Himanta Biswa, that he's certainly being the man of a will, and he wants to do what he wants to do, and he's very unapologetic when he says something. And there are many statements which perhaps people won't have even thought to put on social media. He's putting it openly in the conclaves and whatnot, right? So that reflects of the willpower what this man has and the party has. Now, at the center, I have been, in my opinion, I have always believed that somehow, while our state government, the central government, has been very capable to deal with the international affairs when it comes to the national security kind of threat, but once these international threats enter the domestic arena, somehow we have failed all the time. So I am very vocal about it. I am very honest. Like that, like for example, they shouldn't have let the Shaheen Bagh take the shape into the right that how it happened. And we saw what happened in the farms law. There are many other aspects. There can be apologia for everything, but the crux of the matter for a layman is that yes, state has failed to do so. Now we have given the state a mandate. Yes, we want the roads. Of course, I live in Bangalore. My roads are pathetic, right? But there are potholes of 1 feet deep and whatnot. It's very horrible at certain places. But still, I would say that the mandate, the BJP, which came for, it was for the security. It was for our safety, our protection. So, and for past 1 year, like for 2022 has been the year where the maximum 295 cases have been filed and maximum killing has been happened on the name of blasphemy. Now, a lot of people who were coming as a part of this gang who go onto the street to talk about something or this or the other, they happen to be from the group of these illegal immigrants. And unless a very strong rules are, even when the Europe woke up to this menace, like in the Sweden, for example, Sweden, there was a report in 2018 that of the 58% of the rape crime committed were done by the illegal immigrants. So their percentage is so less, But among that also, the largest of the more than 50% of rape crimes is being done by illegal immigrants. So it came at a lot of cost was paid by them already. So now we have been paying this cost. And if these laws are not brought in, so nothing will be under check. And we saw the vision of PFI, what's talking about like 2047 and whatnot. So there are a lot of ideas against the India which are working in tandem simultaneously to curtail it from its root. But for that, refugee law will become an essential thing because it is like a fodder to all those who want to prey upon it.
Okay. Okay. One more question is from Yanendra ji. Yanendra ji, the question is refugee problem in India is political issue or social problem? I'd like to answer this because since I'm doing research on this topic, the last my MPhil PhD thesis both were on this topic. If you see India, the context on which, as our esteemed panelists they have pointed out, we don't have refugee laws. When we don't have any refugee laws, that means it's not taken very seriously at the political level. Okay, if we take some issues at political level, then that becomes a political issue because there is a political issue. That's why we have we can take see the things or we can enforce laws on certain issues like refugees to deal with. But if you say it's a social problem, yes, it is a social problem because the kind of here comes the multiculturalism issue. No doubt, India is a country of which has different cultures. They are here. It's a multicultural society. No problem, no issue at all. But the thing is that India at present, which is politically united, and it's the a universal culture is now reigning in India. We do accept people from outside, but they have to. We need to ensure whether they can respect our culture. Okay, our traditions, our issues. If they can do that, then they are most welcome. So, for example, when Afghanistan issue, when Taliban again attacked and took over Afghanistan, government of India was very liberal in allowing Sikh migrants to India because they said that because we share cultural similarity and we have something, we don't see a threat from Sikh migrants coming to India and staying here. But we may not have that kind of attitude for others, but because we are never sure whether they can come and they can settle here and they can, they will not misuse the kind of liberty India government will give. So that's why the government of India is dealing those issues in a very delicate and very careful way. That's why, yes, political issue, refugees has not been a political issue so far because all the political parties, they have to take a stand. And most of the problem is here is that if one country, one political party may be interested to have it, but to create a consensus among other parties, it really takes a time. And India has not reached that point. Just like after 2015 refugee crisis in European Union, all the countries, they're ruled by different political parties. A consensus was developed among them. A solidarity was developed among them. After that only they could able to enforce it. In the same way, we need to have a political consensus first. And unfortunately, that kind of understanding and that kind of thinking has not, it's not developed till now. Yes, it's a social problem. As I discussed, we need to take it into account the cultural, the kind of attack we may see or the kind of interest that may get hampered if they come, the national interest we have. So we need to be careful about it. So we have now come to the flag end of our discussion. Before that, just a quick question to Aabhas ji. Do you see is India's refugee problem have ballooned or to dangerous levels?
Yeah, it indeed has, because looking at the precedents, whatever comes across in the reports and all, it has ballooned to a very dangerous state. And if certainly the actions are not taken, It's because I always say that people please refer to the history. It's all start with the small, and slowly, if you can have Kafiristan, there can be multiple such things. So we need to realize that what it is about. This menace is not just so small; it's too big in nature.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Aabhas ji. Really thankful to your insights. It was very interesting because personally, at my level, I have been associated with this panel discussions for the last 6 editions, and we had different scholars, different social activists, different people from psychologists, economists, scientists, different kind of researchers, scholars. Everybody joined us, and they gave us insight on different aspects of this refugee problem. As I said from the beginning, refugee problem is still a very virgin topic when it comes to research in India, because we don't see many works. Even as a premier institute, Jawaharlal Nehru University, we don't have many works on refugees. Only two courses at Center for Studies in Regional Development, and at my Center for European Studies, we have developed course. So you can imagine what kind of interest. But the interesting fact is that many students, they are interested to do research on refugees. This year, I could not able to accommodate. There were 6 students who wanted to work on refugees, but as per UGC guidelines, I can take only 4. So I had already I had 2 PhD students, so I only took 2 students for to do research on refugees. So this is a very interesting area, and I'm hopeful that in future, Biswa Adhan Kendra or at our level also will invite you and other dignitaries to discuss and deliberate on these issues. So since we had till now we have 6 editions, and different issues have been discussed so far. So the takeaways or the understanding so far we have developed is that it can take many years to find a sustainable solution to the challenges coming from the refugee phenomena. So the key takeaways from various sessions which I attended, and I may like to highlight it, that any reform on refugee governance must address the circumstances of all states, not just a powerful few. We need to plan for rather than simply react to refugee movements. We need to have a plan. We cannot just be emotional, or we cannot just be sensitive about issues. We need to plan how to deal with this refugee issue. Then we need to embrace common but differentiated state responsibility. This is very important. If you when we talk about law, when you talk about responsibilities, we need to have a common but differentiated state responsibility, just like European Union had. Then we need to shift away from national and towards international administration of refugee movement. There must be some rules, because it's not that if some conflict is happening and you are most welcome to my country, it's not my responsibility only, it's the responsibility of others as well. The problem is that when Syrian crisis took place, many of the refugees, they preferred to go to European continent. Why they did not go to UAE or Saudi Arabia? And why they, in fact, they did not invite them to come to their country to stay. So it's not that only I will take the responsibility, and you will not take the responsibility. So you need to have administration like that. Then last but not the least, we need to foster conditions that enable refugees to voluntarily return to their home countries. And when I talk about conditions, we need to discuss these issues with neighboring countries. In case of India, we need to discuss with all the countries who are sending, not only from India, from other countries as well. If we don't have conditions, if we don't have a mechanism how to return, then they will stay here for long. And generations, after some generations, they will claim citizenship, which is, legal, from legal point of view, which is not good also for our country's future, because we are already an overpopulated country. If we just keep our doors open and everybody will come to it, because this is a liberal country, it's not a very kind of very just like other countries in the Asian countries. They are, even in case of China, they are very particular, very serious, and very strict about enforcing their laws. But this is a very liberal country. Our country is very liberal. So we don't need such kind of mechanism. We need to be very careful about it.
मैं बोल दूं.
So with this, I just like to conclude this session. Now may I request Ajay Gajaria ji to offer a vote of thanks. Over to you, Ajay Gajaria. Thank you. Please unmute. Unmute.
Ajay ji unmute.
Yeah. Now am I okay? We are thankful to all the audience we have invited, and we are also thankful to Aabhas ji, as he has really given us insight of a different point of view regarding public morality and public order. The India has coming through all over the issues. Secondly, even Baba Saheb Ambedkar also have some point of view regarding this refugee issues at that time also. And same time as Aabhas ji has started with his first and foremost interested is regarding the safety and security of India, our India-centric, whatever the refugee policy or displaced person or whatever. So his insight is very much helpful for us to understand this issue, complex issue. So we are very much thankful, Aabhas ji, as you have rightly put up so many different point of view regarding the complex issue, as we have gone through all other earlier 5 episodes through all other personalities from different strata of societies and academicians. We are very much enlightened regarding this subject. We are unfortunately this DK Dubey ji has left for some or other misunderstanding, but his point of view regarding all how government of India has different legal and laws and legal aspect regarding this subject of and our refugee. We are not part of refugee convention. Even then, we have some of our own way of protecting our border. We have some basic rules and regulations, but due to our most wider border and porous border, we are right now very much disturbed with this refugee and all other issues. Right in we say it is in Sri Lanka or Pakistan or Bangladesh or whatever. So whatever subject we are discussing this, which is untouched or say very little touched by all the university and all the university, we are very much thankful Dr. Sakti Prasad ji to guide us, and he has with us since first episode, and his time and again he has given a different aspect of this particular subject. As Center for International Studies, Vishwa Adhyan Kendra, is also trying to see that and try to propagate issues concerned with the India-centric issues. So we are now very much thankful to Aabhas ji, Shri Sakti Prasad ji, Sonali ji for her recitation of sloka, and Prabhakar Tejare ji to